hey Brandy, I love your idea about being more freeform with this. Maybe we post multiple times a week, or maybe we go a little bit between postings, because stuff happens and stuff doesn't happen, and sometimes so much stuff happens that we don't have time to talk about what happened, and sometimes nothing happens and we've got nothing to talk about. I also like the idea that we don't have to do these super edited videos, because I gotta be honest with you, spending 30 minutes recording myself and then an hour and a half editing it so I can get a 6-minute video, way more energy required than I have, because as you know, I've got a lot of kids. Today I am recording from my goat barn. As you can tell, goat. Isn't she adorable? I don't know if you've met before, but this is Totes. Totes my goats. And I am in her house because sometimes I just like hanging out here. It's a really calm environment, very earthy, very rustic. And sometimes it's cool to just come out here with a book, hang out with the goat, and chill. Get away from all the insanity that's in the actual house. And since we're talking about books, I figured I'd answer your question. How do I find new authors and new things to read? So when thinking about this question, I came up with a couple different ways of answering the question. And so the first thing I figured I'd do is talk about some of my favorite authors and how I found them. So my first favorite author is Tamora Pierce. I have been reading her books since 8th grade. In 8th grade, I was going to a middle school, as you know, Elmore Park. And at this middle school, I had read all the books that were on my list of to read books. I had read all the books that had been suggested for me. And I found myself in a position where I wanted to read, because as you know, I've always been very much of a reader, and nothing to read. So I was in the library and I went to the card catalog, which is a completely 90s statement, which is weird because that was 2001. But I went to a physical card catalog and looked up knights. At the time, I was very into medieval culture and the chivalric code. Still am, a little bit. Always been a big historical fiction buff. And so I looked it up and found Alanna the First Adventure by Tamora Pierce. This is a book about a girl who becomes the first female knight in her country in over 100 years. And it seemed interesting to me because, being interested in these things, I knew that you couldn't be a knight if you were a girl, and you didn't just wake up and decide to be a knight. So I read the book, and it was amazing. And it was the first in a series of 4 books. I read all 4 in less than 2 weeks, which shouldn't surprise you either. So after that, I realized that the author continued to write from the same world. New characters, new stories, new ideas. And she became my first favorite author. Now, another favorite author I have is Jacqueline Carey. I adore Jacqueline Carey. I've read almost everything she's written. Not everything, but almost everything. Because she is an eclectic writer, and some of the things she writes just aren't my cup of tea. I've met her multiple times. Lovely woman. Totally will drink with you. She drank with me. It was rocking. She actually got naked with a friend of mine. Totally different story. Non-sexual. I found her because a mutual friend that you and I have had shown up at our house one day with a book. Not by Jacqueline Carey, by Kelly Armstrong, another author I'm a huge fan of. And I saw the book and thought, that's an interesting cover. And I know you're not supposed to judge books by their cover, but we all do. And so, with a little bit of extra money, a week or 2 later, I found myself in a bookstore, browsing, looking for that book that she had brought to our house. So I find the book. I grab the book, and then I do what I want to do in a bookstore. Wander. Wandering in bookstores is the best way to find new authors. Talk to the people who work at the bookstore. Oh my gosh, they know the best new authors. but sometimes just wander around. And that's what I did. And I found another interesting book cover. On this book cover was a girl, naked from the waist up, with a glorious back tattoo. Well, that's weird. So I look over, because it is in the historical fiction section, and I think, doesn't seem super historical to me. So I read the back, and it is so interesting. This 3-paragraph summary of the story. I'm hooked. So I purchase it, Kushiel's Dart, and I read a third of it and put it down because it is an exhausting book to read. Super lyrical, very difficult, technically unbelievably hard to read, and must have been difficult to write. Year goes by, I finally pick the book up again, start over, finish the whole thing. I love the book. Again, first in a series. There's 2 other books in that series, and it is a trilogy of trilogies, if that seems interesting to you. 9 total books covering the story of 3 separate main characters. So that's how I found 2 of my favorite authors. A card catalog, which I don't even know if you could do anymore, and wandering a bookstore. So let's go to the card catalog idea. Yes, card catalogs don't even exist anymore. If I go to my local library, which is closed right now because of the coronavirus outbreak, but if I were to go and they were to be open and I were to try to look for a book, they'd have a digital card catalog, which is even better because books can be filed under hundreds of categories, not just the few amount of categories that they actually have written down, not just the categories that someone thought of, but the ones you're thinking of right now that no one even thought of, like magical Egyptian fiction. I mean, yeah, the librarian probably didn't write that down, but if you write it down in the search engine, you'll find it. You'll find them, I promise you. So check your library. Go to bookstores, wander around, judge a book by its cover. Sometimes it's a bad idea, and sometimes you find the weirdest, best stories. And if you can't do either of those because coronavirus has you stuck at home, Google is an amazing card catalog. Also, there are apps that connect you to your friends and help you find books. But ask your friends. You know I will give you tons of recommendations for books, and you will read 3% of them, maybe. But which of your friends reads the same books that you read? You know that I'm a member of several groups based off of some of these books. I'm a member of a group that meets once a year to have this huge extravagant party based off of Jacqueline Carey books. So when I'm just stumped and I need something new to read, I'll text one of them. What are you reading? What are you finding interesting right now? That's the best options I've got. So, what are you reading?